The Nuggets face the Memphis Grizzlies, and what I'm going to go ahead and say is the last big game of Denver's 2022-23 season. We'll break it all down, why it matters, what the implications will be, the matchups, all of that. Plus, yes, I will talk about the perk thing here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen. Appreciate you guys joining us on all platforms. Folks hanging out with me in the chat section here on the old YouTubes for a late show. Carlos and Joe, what's up, guys? Hanging out with us on a Thursday night, recording this late on Thursday night. Tried to get in earlier. My kids were home all day, so I was not able to get a show in before now. All sorts of folks jumping in for the live show. On today's show, we're going to talk about Memphis. Game on Friday. This is a monster game for both teams. It's a huge opportunity for Denver. I'll go into all the reasons why in the first segment. Second segment, we'll actually get into the matchups and the keys to that game because it is a significant one, both for this game and looking ahead to the playoffs if the two were to meet in a potential Western Conference Finals series. Finally, in the third segment, I'm going to get to some of the stuff that's gone on in the MVP conversation. It will not be a long segment because most of the stuff you guys really don't need to pay attention to, but we're going to talk about it anyway. We'll go ahead and get to all that on today's show. So, do need to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Okay, here we go. Joe is just starting me. I'm just going to take a little of a detour here. Joe says, is Arkansas the Midwest? I always thought of it as being the South. It's right in the middle. So the south of Arkansas is absolutely the South. It's deep South. It's completely South. It's honestly more Texas in the South, like western corner of it than it is anywhere else. But like the northern area where I'm from, very Midwestern, very like farmland, all that kind of stuff, extremely backwards. So it's very Southern, but also like it has the climate is a little bit more Midwestern. So I was right kind of in the middle. Most Arkansans will still tell you that they're Southern. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the Memphis game. Here's why Memphis and this game matters. The Denver Nuggets enter into Friday's contest versus the Memphis Grizzlies as the number one team in the Western Conference. They're at 44-19. The Grizzlies enter at 38-23, 4 back in the loss column. The Grizzlies at 44-19 have 19 games remaining. The Grizzlies are obviously chasing to try and catch up back 4. If the Nuggets win, they clinch tiebreaker. That means that after that game, the Grizzlies will fall 5 back in the loss column, and the Nuggets have tiebreaker. I will tell you as an expert in covering the playoff picture, that's it. It's over. If they win tomorrow night, the Denver Nuggets are going to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Game over. They could still win if they lose. That's entirely possible. It's even probable. They would still be up 3 in the loss column. The Nuggets have enough home games for them to get home. But if they win tomorrow night, it's done. It's over. It's finite. You sent a message to Memphis that, hey, you got this last one. We were coming on that off that win versus the Cavaliers on a East Coast road trip, but you've now gotten beaten by us twice in this building, which you're going to have to go to. Sends a little bit of a message. It's very important though to note that this does in fact secure the 1 seed for the Nuggets. I really don't have any other, there's no scenario in which the Kings are going to be able to catch with 6 back. The Suns obviously are not going to catch 10 back. By the way, what if I told you before the season, the Nuggets were going to finish 10 games up on the Phoenix Suns? Like, that's what they're projected to do. That's absolutely crazy. The Nuggets have 19 games remaining. The Memphis Grizzlies have 21 games remaining as we head into tomorrow night. There's just not enough time for them to make up for that. That's another actually pretty relevant thing as we start doing playoff pictures and magic numbers and all of that. The number of games remaining is really important. I will talk a lot about this on Twitter, and I talk a lot about this on the shows that I'm on, whether it's Buckets, my Action Network podcast, or Locked On NBA on Mondays. Like, a big factor in these things I always talk about is back in the loss column. Games back does not matter, and here's why. You can make up wins. Okay, if they're at 23 wins and you're at 21, you win 2 more, and they haven't played. Guess what? You caught them. You can't make up losses. Once you're behind them, you need them to lose in order for you to catch up. Now, you can expect a certain amount, But that's like why I was focusing on in the loss column. That's where you have to start these conversations. And so the Memphis Grizzlies, if they are 5 back in the loss column with Denver having 18 games remaining, there is no scenario in which the Grizzlies can finish with a strong enough run and the Nuggets finish with a poor enough one in tandem for the Grizzlies to overtake them. It's just simply not really possible. I like this. Freddie says, the season has been special. It felt like the Nuggets fans actually started to enjoy it in January. Like, first couple months of the season were stressful. Don't blame you. December 7th, they started to turn things around. They were great in December. And really by January, it felt like most of the Nuggets fan base had kind of started to realize it. Tomorrow night should also be kind of a coronation. It should be like a moment for Ball Arena to be like, okay, like this was it, right? There are other games left on the schedule that you can argue are important. The issue is that there's not really going to be stakes for Denver in those games. There are narrative stakes in the game versus the Philadelphia 76ers or the Milwaukee Bucks later in the month of March at home at Ball Arena. But like, you know, they face the Raptors and the Knicks. Like the Nets are obviously not the same kind of team. They face the Kings in the last game of the season. You know, like that's always a thing for Michael Malone. The Suns on March 31st, right? They face the Suns, and you can argue like that's like the biggest game of the season. By March 31st, the seedings will be set. There will not be an incentive for the Denver Nuggets to necessarily need to win that game. This is the last game in which the Nuggets have real value in winning it, that winning it accomplishes something for them. They've done so much work this season to put themselves into this position. And being in this spot. And honestly, this is something really remarkable. Everyone had high expectations for this team coming in, which is why there was so much stress for the first 2 months of the season. But tomorrow night, they have an opportunity to, again, there's wild, wacky scenarios in which the Nuggets could wind up losing the 1 seed. But I am telling you that based off of everything that I know about covering playoff races, they win tomorrow and they get it. That's incredible. Like, that's absolutely incredible to do, to be able to accomplish this as like the number one. They're going to be the best team in the Western Conference, like start to finish, absolutely the best on national TV. By the way, this game is on ESPN. Absolutely incredible. Hurricane, this season was fun. It's getting stressful. Not going to get any easier. If you want even more good news for you to make you feel better, Hurricane, how about this? The Warriors move into the 5 spot with the win over the Clippers tonight, which means that your first round opponent could wind up being, I don't know, Dallas. And then your 4-5 combo could be Suns Warriors. You're getting one of the Suns or Warriors in the second round if the standings were to hold. That's pretty crazy. Robert says the fear is this team stops caring. I've said this a lot, and Adam and I kind of disagree on this. I'm just going to tell you like what the numbers say. Okay. The numbers say that how you perform this last 3 weeks of the season, not this week. This is like the last like relevant one, that the numbers will tell you that performance over the last 3 weeks of the season just genuinely doesn't matter, that it doesn't have any sort of correlation to how you play in the playoffs. They're not going to forget about, they're not going to forget like how to play together. They're not going to, I don't think they're going to get rusty. This team really is like they so much of them is about rhythm and feeling. I don't think it's hard for them to reach that level. So I think that they're pretty well built. Hurricane says, I don't want the regular season to end. Yeah. I mean, this is, you can always say like, well, in the playoffs, and when the playoffs come, like, yeah, you lose that first one, gonna be pretty rough. This is a good question from Matthew Tinsky. Should we expect playoff minutes in the game? Let me look at something. All right. So they play Friday. They don't play again until Monday. So they got 2 days off versus this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a tighter rotation and that some starters do go longer. Would advise against. Now, you got to factor in Jamal's back, Aaron's rib, and KCP's been playing just like a lot of minutes. They could really use getting KCP some time off. So maybe not. But I do think that this is going to be like, this has to be a game that they circle. This has to be a game that they take seriously. If they don't, if they lay an egg tomorrow night, what would be my concern level? On a scale of like 1 to 5, my concern level would be like a 3, just from the perspective of like, this was a good opportunity for you to really like, it was a missed opportunity and you don't want to have those late in the season. So I think that kind of matters. Callie says we need the Suns and Kings to switch spots in the standings. Could be tough, man. Kings are up 4 in the loss column. Like, this was the stretch. Like, that Clippers win was huge for them. It really boosted them, and it set them up really well. But yeah, like the ideal is that you get Dallas Kings in the 4-5. Because even though I think Dallas is a bad matchup for Denver, like you'd still rather see Dallas than some of these other squads that you might want to keep seeing. Okay, so that's why this game matters. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the matchup itself, about what happened in the last game, how Denver can fix that, what are Denver's advantages and disadvantages, and we'll talk about all that and more in the next segment. We'll do that when we come back. First, I need to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. I'm going to be on MPJ threes on tomorrow. I'm definitely taking a threes same game parlay with the Nuggets winning that game along with MPJ threes. I think he's going to have a bounce back performance. FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We're also brought to you today by the Nissan Ariya, and we're going to talk about the most electric player of the week. Nissan's most electric player of the week is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. The Nissan electric player of the week for this week, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it to Nikola Jokic. Because why? Because he is frying the airwaves with takes as everyone tries to come up with reasons why he can't be MVP for the third time in a row. Look, all the things that you described the Nissan Ariya, those are things that you describe about Nikola Jokic. Electric, brilliantly fierce. Jokic is a fierce competitor. It gets lost. Sometimes it goes missing. That guy does want to win. He's very good about not making it demonstrative. He's not performative with it. Fiercely elegant. Who is more fiercely elegant than Nikola Jokic in the NBA? Stunningly powerful. Ask anybody who's been hit in the shoulder by him. Elegantly powerful. And they deliver on duality, the combination of fierceness and elegance. That's why it's the Nissan Ariya is a perfect crossover, and that's why Jokic is the perfect crossover between guard and center. The EV for people who love to drive is the 2023 Nissan Ariya. Shop now at nissanusa.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. All right, back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Matt Moore with you on a Friday solo show. Grizzlies game is going to be late. I will not get back from the arena until like 1 a.m. So there's not going to be a show tomorrow night after the game, but there will be one on Saturday. I don't know if we're going to do morning or night, but there will be a show on Saturday. So make sure to check that over the weekend, win or lose. So let's talk about this matchup. All right. Last game, the most important stat for you to take away was that the Denver Nuggets gave up 20 points off of turnovers in that game versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Can't do that. Okay. The Grizzlies' entire thing. I'll give you the 30-second thing on the Grizzlies. Their half-court offense is bad, not mediocre, not bad compared to the elite levels. They're 25th in half-court offense. That's despite adding Kennard. That's despite getting Desmond Bane back. They cannot score when the game slows down. This is one of the reasons why most of us in the betting community are ready to fade them in the playoffs, because that's when the game slows down. But if you allow them to run, that is where they can get very good. This team is terrible on the road, and they're specifically terrible versus Western Conference opponents. They are one of the worst teams in the league versus the West, which is, if you want to say, that's really funny because Ja said the West is fine. They're fine in the West. It's not necessarily wrong. I think the biggest matchup as we go into this kind of game is going to be the Nuggets perimeter defense versus guys like Desmond Bane. You can't let those guys start to get hot. Kennard does offer a little bit of a different dynamic. One of the most impressive things from the Nuggets win at home versus the Grizzlies early in the season was, to me, how they covered in the pick and roll. That was one of the first games where I really started to see what they were capable of in defending. They threw so many different coverages at Ja. Ja Morant needs a pull-up jumper. He committed to working on one in the offseason, and then just basically the NBA regular season is so tough and it's such a grind, he got away from it. And it's a real problem. He wants to get to the floater, which means there was a key sequence in that game in Denver earlier in the season, where Jokic hedged on a side pick and roll up at the top. Okay, it was a right side pick and roll. They hedged hard. Ja split it because Ja's incredible. He's got so much speed and athleticism. Jeff Green came over and took a charge. Like Vlatko's going to have to make those type of plays because Ja was not willing to just get to that mid-range baseline area and take a pull-up. He still went to the floater like a little runner, and that allowed Jeff Green to take the charge. Those are the types of sequences that you need. You do need to vary up your coverage. You can play some drop versus Ja. That's okay. Like you can definitely take some of those opportunities. Steven Adams being out for Memphis, I think, is actually kind of a benefit for them in this matchup. They're going to have to go small. It's going to have to be Jaren, who's going to obviously battle versus Jokic. One of the issues for Memphis here is that Jaren's very foul prone. So if Jokic is calm and collected and actually looks to score in this contest, he's probably going to be able to get Jaren in foul trouble. That's when Xavier Tillman comes in. And I started Tillman last time versus Jokic. That's the one where like Jokic should just be able to eat. Like Tillman's just not all that good. The bench units is going to be a problem in this game. Once again, like you're going to see that the all bench unit, if Malone pulls out that all bench unit tomorrow night, they're going to give up a big run going from first quarter into the second quarter. Memphis's bench is much better, even though Memphis's bench isn't as good as it was a year ago because they lost some key pieces. That's going to have to be like a real focus. If the Nuggets can get finally a good bench stretch from Thomas Bryant, who matches up pretty well versus Tillman, and Brandon Clark, especially, like Clark's so undersized versus Thomas Bryant. If Reggie Jackson can handle Tyus Jones, Tyus is amazing. Like Tyus sets pace very well and can shoot. Like that second unit is very dangerous. So you're going to have to be pretty consistent about it. Oh boy. A lot of comments about the paddings thing. We're going to get to it. Third segment. So there's all these kind of things that you need to get into. Oh, CT's in here. Would you play Braun in this one, Matt? It's a good question, CT. I think you can probably get away without him. I think he might wind up having to play in a playoff series. I think that one of the things though is like Memphis doesn't have a lot of size on the wings. Like they don't have that's why they were shopping for OG Anunoby, right? Is like they want to get a guy like that. They need a guy like that. Like it's Bane and Dillon right now. And you're talking about, Dillon's 6'7", so he's big. Do you want Christian really guarding Dillon? Because you kind of want Dillon shooting, right? Like that's fine. And then you've got Desmond Bane, who's 6'5". Bruce Brown can probably handle the Dillon Brooks matchup. Like I just don't feel bad about that being a combo that's going to really give him trouble. So I think when they stagger and Dillon's, kind of initiating more, that's probably good for them. Christian would be more ideal if he could guard Tyus Jones more, but I don't think that's a good matchup for him. He struggles with the faster guards. I don't think you need him in this one. Somebody mentioned no AG in that last game. It's absolutely true. It doesn't matter here, especially for combating that Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson lineup. That's Denver's best lineup, by the way, is Memphis' best lineup, rather, is Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Dillon. That's their best lineup, and they almost never get to it. It's just for those of you that think that Malone is the only coach that makes rotation adjustments that drive you insane. So a lot of those things to try and get to in this game. Christian guarding Luke Kennard, not a bad idea. Wouldn't mind to see it, but I think you can probably get away without it. Freddie says, hopefully Murray is on his A game. Interesting question. I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be a Jamal game, just from the perspective of how good the Grizzlies half-court defense is. Like, the Grizzlies have the best half-court defense in the league. This is the best half-court defense in the league. They are arguably the league's best defense. Milwaukee technically has the mantle right now. They've taken over the spot at the top, but I think Memphis has a strong argument as the actual best defense in the league this season. Like I would go towards them. Memphis is at the Bucks are at 109.1, the Grizzlies are at 109.3. This to me is the best defense in the league. the Nuggets should be able to score on them because they're the Nuggets and there's really no offensive counter for them. So Freddie says, so it's up to Joker. I think it's up to Joker, MPJ, and they're going to need to, you need to, the biggest thing here, honestly, is they need to get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble, or they need to space him out to where he's not able to patrol, because his rim protection is going to cut off a lot of the stuff on the interior. And what you don't want if you're the Nuggets is you don't want to stagnate where you're just getting like, okay, they're sending doubles at Joker and they're just taking non-rhythmic catch and shoot threes, which are a little stunted. That happened a lot last year. You don't want to get into that. That's what this defense is capable of doing. So you're going to need to go ahead and see that. Kane says this should be our 4-5 best game, Jokic and AG. I don't know. Like, this is a really tough matchup from that two big lineup. Like, I think Joker does his thing because it's Joker, right? But AG, especially since coming back from the rib, has had, he's had some hard times. And that's why, like, I think there could be a little bit of difficulty. Robert says Jokic kills traditional bigs. I wouldn't classify Jaren as a traditional big. I think he's an omega big. He's absolutely incredible. He's going to win DPOY. Robert was talking about Steven Adams. Yeah, that's actually why it's a little bit worse of a matchup. Like, Steven Adams would be better for Denver to play against. If they face off in a playoff series, then Steven Adams is going to be played off that floor by like game 2. It's just kind of how it is. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and I want to get to, I will talk about all the things that people have wanted us to talk about this week that Adam's head will explode. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. All right. So Perkins has had some things to say as of late. The stat padding thing really permeated for whatever reason. Basically Jokic gets a pass because he's white has caused like more obviously tense headlines. I'm not going to go into that stuff. And the reason I'm not going to go into that stuff, honestly, is because I don't feel comfortable, given the depth of those issues, with making that into like an MVP conversation. Like, systemic racism, and like, I'm not trying to lecture Kendrick Perkins, a black man, on this, right? Systemic racism is such a broad, permeating venom in our society. And on this show, during Black Lives Matter movements and the protests, I talked to Chris Dempsey about his experiences. Like, I take that stuff very seriously. And so when we start making this into like MVP discussion, do I think that there are implicit biases that white supremacy has basically permeated throughout our society? I absolutely do. Do I want to use the MVP as like a talking point to negotiate or debate against it? Or really? No, I don't want to get into that. I'll go into the stat padding stuff, though. Stat padding stuff. Bruce Brown was talked about it and laughed it off, said it was a lot ridiculous today. Malone was talking about it. That you can tell that one got through. Like, that one got through. If you haven't, go listen to Mike Singer's podcast where he spoke to Joker after the Rockets game about this criticism. And like, I understand it from Joker's perspective. He's just like, I don't even want the award. What? I have to deal with all this. I have to deal with all this noise in my life about this kind of stuff. And I honestly do kind of feel for him, like, it's not his decision that he didn't campaign to be in the MVP conversation. If they offered him to like not be in the conversation, I think he'd probably think about it. He might want it. Maybe he wants it maybe way more than we think he does, but I think he'd at least think about not being eligible for it if he could withdraw his name. I'm a big believer in the idea of manipulating stats. I'm a big believer in the idea of that statistical production from a box score standpoint, triple doubles, those kind of things, that those things are able to be manipulated in the course of an NBA regular season game and games. Like, you can do this. And there are lots of guys in NBA history that have put up really good numbers, and yet their teams haven't won. It's one of the reasons why, like, I was really interested from the beginning in all of these advanced metrics. And the reason was, it was an opportunity to learn the difference and a quantifiable, concrete evidence. Like, forget all these like math terms. It's evidence of what makes a guy a winning player versus a dude that gets numbers, because I have seen and watched both. I have seen guys who just go out there and they put up these big stat lines and they score a bunch of points, but they don't actually make a difference in the win-loss column. They don't make their teams better. They don't make their teams more impactful. I have all these metrics to back up the fact that Jokic is that guy. But what's really frustrating to me is that there's been some conversation this season from some Nuggets fans, I think that are just trying to be fair, of like, yeah, he definitely like stat pads. They've put him back in to get the triple-double sometimes. That's the thing that's happened. Okay. And Joker has sought out trying to get that 10th assist. And I don't blame him, because across the course of an NBA season, you're going to have that. But here's a big thing that's the difference here, is that never once, not a single time in my entire history of watching Nikola Jokic, have I ever seen him sacrifice a winning opportunity, a meaningful opportunity, a meaningful possession in pursuit of his own agenda, whether it was to get points, to make himself look good, to get that final assist. I've never seen it. There's a middle ground here where like Jokic is aware of these things. The triple-double winning thing, I think is real. The reason I think that's real is because I also talked about it with Russell Westbrook. Like Russ's numbers, the Thunder's record when Russ had a triple-double in 2017 was phenomenal. I did the numbers the other day. If you have a guy that has a triple-double, your winning percentage is like 80%. It's a good thing. But like none of these things are what makes Joker great. And it's frustrating to me that we've reached a point where evidence, that's all stats are. It's evidence in this conversation. In this conversation, that's what they are. Is the numbers are evidence. It's like, okay, we see something, but how do we know it? Because you can't trust your eyes. I can watch, I've had this happen where I've watched a game and been like, God, they got torched on defense. And then I look at the numbers. I'm like, oh no, actually they gave up a 105. That's fine. The problem was the offense. Like, you just can't trust yourself. The level of arrogance it takes, to me, for someone to say, I know better than what the numbers say. To be like, the numbers say that Nikola Jokic literally beats opponents more than anybody else does when they're on the floor. No one beats the opponent by more points, which is the entire point of the game. That's it. The point of the NBA, the first point is money. The second point of the NBA is to win. How do you win? You score more than the opponent, regardless of whether that means defense, offense, or what. No one wins by more when they're on the floor than Nikola Jokic. And that would be one thing if Joker were averaging 9, 8, and 4 or 17, 6, and 3. But he's not. He's averaging 25 and a triple-double. These conversations are insulting to you, not to me. I live in this, right? Like, this is the muck that I choose. And this is better than working. It's better than a real job. But like, they're insulting to you. You as a fan, you spend your time to like be invested in sports and care about a team and care about a sport just to get through life. And this is what you're met with, is like these idiotic narratives. It's mind-numbing. And like, I don't even know if Jokic is the MVP. I'll be real with you. Like Giannis, I had Jokic significantly ahead because Giannis didn't have the efficiency that he's had in previous season. Giannis has gotten a lot more efficient over the last 2 months. Like, he's catching up, and he is that impactful on defense. And the Bucks are that awesome, and they do have the best record in the league right now. That stuff does matter to me. Like, I'm no longer like, no, it's Jokic and it's over. I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like, Giannis is pretty amazing too. But the way that these things are talked about is insulting to everyone. And I get that fans want to defend their guy. The only thing that I would say is like, when you're having these conversations on Twitter, or you're having these conversations with your friends, or whatever you're talking about this with, I would just implore you, all you got to do is talk about the good things that Jokic does. It's not tear down everybody else, because that's where the stuff gets really toxic. And it's okay if somebody disagrees with you. Nobody has to think that Jokic is the MVP. I think the idea that it's like, it's dumb. You're dumb if you don't think he's the MVP. That's wrong. Giannis is amazing. He's a monster. He's awesome. Embiid's been incredible. Embiid's been phenomenal, right? All the things I've tended to pay attention to point to Jokic being a little bit better. Just being a little bit more deserving, more impactful towards winning, which is how I define valuable. But we can have decent disagreements about this without inventing these insane, crazy stuff that goes on. Robert says, record Matt? Who actually has won more games played? Sure. I tend to give a little bit of leeway on this where I think you need to play a certain number of them, but Giannis is probably going to hit those levels. I don't think that like because Jokic is going to play 5 to 7 to 10 more games. I don't know. And that's probably even a little bit high. I don't know if that's that much. Yeah, Robert says, I think if it's not Jokic, it's Giannis for sure. That's how I get it. That's kind of how I feel. All right. Last thing I want to tell you, I had a question about playoff picture, about the what the playoff picture kind of looks like. I want to run through this real quick. Nuggets are, if they win tomorrow night, going to be 1 seed. They're probably going to be 1 seed regardless. 2, still likely to be Memphis, even with Sacramento kind of nipping at their heels. 3 at this point, I'm ready to say Kings. I really thought the Suns might catch them, but now I'm like, my projections changed after this last little stretch, and now I still have the Kings in the 3 spot. The Suns right behind them. Like, it might be like a game. Suns in 4, which would not be ideal for Denver. Ooh, I said Suns in 4. Sorry about that. Suns in the 4th seed. And then 5th seed is probably going to be Dallas, I would think. But Golden State has taken over this stretch, so maybe not. Steph comes back on Sunday too. If Denver's in a 1 with Suns 4 or 5, the good news is they play each other. The bad news is you're going to get whoever comes out of that. So, but hey, you're going to have to go through one of them anyway. Better to narrow it down to 1, get them second round. They'll be exhausted after that series, probably. Maybe not a bad thing. As far as the first round opponent, look, with LeBron out, it's hard to say that the Lakers are going to make that run there. Maybe they do. The Lakers are not doomed. I've circled this. There's a handful of games that they can win in this next 3 weeks with LeBron out that will get them to 500 over that stretch of games. That's enough to keep them within range of the play-in and then surge and get in through the back door. Utah, I think, is probably not going to give up as easy as people expect, but they're at least vulnerable. The Wolves, I think, are actually pretty good. I think a good first round matchup for Denver would be the Wolves. Like, that'd be like that's a good outcome. You can win that series in kind of short order and go from there. It'd be narrative city with Tim Conley, but in general, I think that's a pretty decent and possible first round matchup. The play-in tournament messes a lot of like trying to figure out where this is all going to be. Cause it's like, look, I can tell you, hey, it's probably going to be this team, but if the other, if it's 7 Wolves versus 8, or if it's 7 Clippers versus 8 Wolves, right? Like, what if the Wolves just shoot really well one night? Could be Clippers first round. That's definitely looking a little bit more possible. So, that's kind of what it looks like. The playoff picture, though, is looking considerably more daunting. If you want to know what your ideal situation is you need to root for Dallas, the Clippers, and sadly, you need to root against the Kings, which is sad, but you need to really root against the Kings, because if the Kings slide to 4 and you get like a 4-5, either Kings Warriors or Kings Mavs, that's a pretty good situation, I think, for Denver. If you can really get Kings Mavs, that's the ideal, but we'll see. Warriors start to pick it up, and definitely looks like they've got a shot at making it into the 4-5 matchup. All right, let's get wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed a late show. Enjoy the game on Friday night, what I've described as the last big game of the Nuggets season. We'll be here for post-game coverage on Saturday. Make sure to tune in for that. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Check out all of Adam's great work over at DNVR. Have yourselves a great weekend. Stay safe. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.